its Red Square in Moscow, November the 7th. Like America's 4th of July, the Soviet Union celebrates its birthday, the anniversary of its historic socialist revolution. It appears to be a time of major change in the Soviet Union. New people have taken up the reins of power. Young men who are not afraid to rethink the words of Marx and Lenin in the light of a changing world. The words on everybody's lips this year are perestroika and glasnost. Perestroika, reconstruction. Glasnost, openness. A new spirit of freedom to constructively criticize what's wrong with the system so it can be fixed. To the Soviets, these are revolutionary ideas. But how far will they go? How fast? And in what direction? The answers to these questions will be of great importance to the world. In August 1985, before the words perestroika or glasnost hit the headlines in the West, Turner Broadcasting made its first contact with the Soviets to discuss an idea of Ted Turner's for a documentary television series. It would open up the people of the Soviet Union to the world. Up to then, it had not been done. Being there, filming over the next 2 years turned out to be an exciting adventure, an experience that is the basis for a 7-hour TBS television series, Portrait of the Soviet Union. The scope of the TBS production was in keeping with that of the Soviet Union itself, the largest nation on Earth in area. Sprawling across 11 time zones from the Baltic Sea to the great forests of the Pacific coast. It is 1/6 of the world's landmass, a nation large enough to fit within its borders all of the United States, China, and with enough room left over for most of Western Europe. The series concentrates on people, the great diversity of people within the Soviet Union. Hundreds of nationalities living in 15 socialist republics. Russians, Kazakhs, Estonians, Yakutis, Georgians, Ukrainians, Armenians, hundreds of ethnic groups who call themselves Soviets, even as they struggle to retain their old cultures, their traditional identities. A farmer in the Ukraine, a working mother in Tallinn, teenagers in Rostov-Veliki, a blacksmith in Suzdal, a truck mechanic in Siberia, a choreographer in Tbilisi, a father in Riga, worried about the education of his 2 sons, a collector of old cars in Estonia. Individual stories rendered with fairness and understanding by the Russian-speaking TBS production crews. In addition to the portrait style, there is another important thing that holds the series together. The host and narrator, Roy Schreider.
Здравствуйте. Hello, I'm Roy Schreider, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this remarkable series about one of the most extraordinary countries in the world, the Soviet Union. Together we're going to take a journey that most Westerners never take.
Roy Schreider is familiar to millions throughout the world for his leading performances in Jaws and All That Jazz and many other motion pictures. He traveled extensively throughout the Soviet Union during production of the series, and his ability to tell the stories of these people enhances the accessibility of the television programs to general audiences. And his enthusiasm for the project seems obvious.
I'm Roy Schreider.
The Portrait of the Soviet Union series begins with Mother Russia, for the Russians are the driving force in the nation. The first hour explores the psyche of a people Winston Churchill once described as a riddle wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma. For 40 years, the Russians submerged their ethnic identity in the interest of forging a new Soviet nation. Today, they are secure in their Soviet citizenship, and they're beginning to ask themselves, who are we? What is our Russianness? Where is our past? The future of the nation, they say, lies in the vast and largely untapped forest and tundra region to their east. Siberia. Ice on fire. The attraction of Siberia to Soviet youth is akin to the magnetism of America's frontier west. Here, the cream of Soviet youth comes to help the motherland exploit the mineral riches and earn a pay that is 5 times the national average. This second hour of this series shows many sides of Siberia, the native populations which share this vast land, the descendants of Russian exiles banished to Siberia generations ago, and the brave new world of Soviet youth, where the average age is just 26, and more than half the people are female, where the baggage of their old world is left behind. If Siberia is the future, then surely the ancient peoples of the Caucasus are the living past. Here, isolated in mountains that soar 5 miles high, is the exotic region that the ancients called the end of all the earth. This third hour of the series examines the survival of cultures that go back to the days of the Old Testament. Here, the Soviet system accommodates the ancient ways of Armenians, Dagestanis, and Georgians. Here, warm southern sunshine nourishes a warrior tradition in a people who still find a lot of ways to demonstrate their independence in theater, the arts, music, and dance. The impact of socialism is nowhere more profound than here in Soviet Central Asia. The Oriental republics which lie at the door to China, along the route of Marco Polo's Golden Road. The fourth hour of Portrait of the Soviet Union is the story of tradition with a different ending, perhaps. Here, the descendants of Tamerlane and Genghis Khan work peacefully on state farms. The fourth hour of the series documents a third world people coming face to face with the modern world and embracing it. A world created with massive Soviet modernization programs. Old World Europe, a cosmopolitan people by any standard, and a robust socialist economy which has the Moscow planners going back to their calculators. It's all in the Baltic style. The tiny Baltic republics of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, they seem to be having a startling impact on the rest of the Soviet Union. The fifth hour of the portrait series shows how Western ideas float effortlessly here alongside the tenets of Marx and Lenin. It shows how the intellectual and artistic creativity of these Baltic people fit into today's Soviet world.
The Soviet Union faces west, along 1,000 miles of gentle rolling farmland. It's a vulnerable land, with no natural barriers. It has always been the favorite route of invading armies. Swedes, Poles, French, and Germans have all cut their way through here, heading for Moscow. The people whose homes stood in their path were not warriors, but farmers, Ukrainians, Belarusians, people of the land, a land steeped in the horrors of war.
Swords and Plowshares, the sixth hour in the TBS portrait series, deals with the legacy of war and invasion in a region which is the nation's breadbasket. Even after 4 decades, the specter of war still colors life here. And as they stubbornly cling to their peaceful ways, death and destruction touches the Ukraine once more in the form of nuclear horror. Chernobyl, the unthinkable accident. As the world sends help, they abandon their homes to an invisible enemy and begin to do what they've always done, build again. How are we in the West to interpret the new reaching out by the Soviet Union? Is it simply a new nation coming of age? Or is it the new beginning for the country of the revolution? This final program makes clear that understanding is possible, that the Soviet people are different, but they are also like us in important ways. Regardless of politics, they are here. They're not going to go away, and neither are we. Structure of the portrait series permits the introduction of important ideas about the Soviet Union that are embodied in the lives of the program characters. The idea of Russianness. You can catch a glimpse of it here in the ancient town of Suzdal, which is being restored by college students.
Vyacheslav Basov is a samorodak, Russian for self-taught master of a craft. Samorodaks are much respected.
Человек создан для того, чтобы создать.
I think man was created to make a song with his hands, to create beauty. It's impossible to live without beauty. The blacksmith craft is the most important in life. I've dedicated my life to discovering ancient techniques like the secrets of Damascus steel. I want to pass this on to my students.
Samorodak Basov is Russian right down to his boots. His students adore him.
He is a great man, a very kind man. He is very spiritual and a good teacher. He doesn't hide anything or keep any secrets, and he is very proud when he hears that one of us is successful.
We've got to preserve the beautiful things of our past, not just for ourselves, but for our children and for their children.
The core of ethnic identity to many is the Russian Orthodox Church. This is Zagorsk, its Vatican City.
Today, the church, for so long a misfit in an atheist state, seems to be gaining a new recognition, but not so much for its Christian message as simply for its inherent Russianness.
There was a time when connection with the church gave some social advantages. Today, belonging to the church doesn't give any advantages to a Soviet citizen. That's why the person who does belongs for his inner beliefs and is truly a practicing Christian.
The government is officially atheist, but the right to worship as you please is enshrined in the Soviet Constitution. It was not surprising to find in the big cities some influence of the West. The portrait crews found that a strong curiosity about America has penetrated even to the small towns where most Russians live.
Millions of Russians are scattered across the Great Plain in small towns like Rostov-Veliki. The rhythm of life here is governed by the weather. 40 below in winter, the 90s in midsummer. There's a feeling that everything around you has seen it all before.
We've heard a lot about your country, and we are interested. We like your music. There was a television satellite bridge between our countries. I liked it very much. I saw people just like us. No different. We'd like to meet American girls of our own age, to have a heart-to-heart talk, to find out what they are interested in, what their problems are, how they spend their free time. Just to talk to them. Of course, we'd ask them about American boys.
A theme which surfaced several times in the series is that of working mothers. This is Svetlana Feminka, and like career women everywhere, she ponders the conflicts of her work and her family.
I think the family is important in our country. Of course, we have divorces and there are orphans, the kind of problems you know in the West. The children always suffer most. It's important to realize, though, that women today don't want to lose their status. They want to be active members of society. They want to go to work. Of course, they also want to be at home with their families as wives and mothers.
Svetlana is a career police officer on the way up. She has since been promoted to a judgeship, but when these films were made, she headed up a squad of 40 officers dealing with juvenile offenders. As Soviet society becomes more complex, so does the nature of crime. Drugs, alcohol, violence, all are on the increase here. Svetlana feels a strong dedication to her work.
I love my job because the youngsters we are dealing with are the future of the country. It requires persistence, but maybe most of all a love of young people.
Her love of young people doesn't mean that Lieutenant Svetlana Femyenka is a pushover, as tough guy Master Dumchev, with the Boy George badge, will soon discover. As the city settles down into its evening rhythm, Svetlana discusses her day with Ivan. Then turns her attention to the New Year shopping, her own family, and a surprise that many Russian children will have before the day is out. Russian New Year is a festival of parties, gifts, and delicacies, and the Russians grab at it with both hands. It's a time for family, friends, and children. Russians love their children. In Russia, on this special eve, you can hire Grandfather Frost and his snow maiden to give your presents to the little ones. The magic never fails.
As production of the series went on, it became evident that there was a new mood infused in the people here. The Soviets were cautious about the way things were going, but the mood was real, and it was deepening. It surfaced at some unexpected times.
A few hundred yards from the Kremlin is a Moscow institution that once thrived on good times and creative debate. Slaviansky Bazaar Restaurant had its heyday before the revolution. The favorite haunt of Moscow's bohemian artists. This is an office retirement party. And these ladies, in their own way, are just as wild as any bohemian artist. Amid all the customary Russian toasts of good health, good luck, prosperity, and here's to the future, one lady, completely impromptu, decided to make her own toast to the camera.
Мы встретились с нашими друзьями, с друзьями из Америки.
To our American friends, we want to live together in friendship.
Production of the television series extended over a year and a half, from the winter streets of Moscow to the sunshine of Central Asia. In Marco Polo's time, these horsemen might have been Mongol warriors. Today, in modern Kyrgyzia, they are shepherds, racing on a state stud farm.
Up here, shepherds still live in yurts, traditional hide tents. One of them is Sagindik Zanuzakov.
I'm 37 years old. Like my father before me, I'm a senior shepherd, working with my wife and eldest son on the state stud farm. When my father was my age, we had no electricity, no television. He lived modestly. Now I have got practically everything I want. I have a house in the village, a TV, and as a reward for good work, I was able to move up the waiting list to buy a car. Life's getting to be more comfortable.
In one generation, this shepherd's family has come face to face with the modern world and embraced it. And yet, they've managed to hold on to some of their traditions. The changes their children will face may be even more dramatic. Modernization, progress on a massive scale costing billions, and a steady stream of European Soviet immigrants has brought the 20th century to Central Asia. 60 years ago, women wore the veil. Today, it's rarely seen.
The steppes of Kazakhstan are the prairies of the Soviet Union. It is a land settled by pioneers, much like the American homesteaders in the West. It is a farming land.
In the 50s, millions of people migrated or were resettled here through the government's virgin land policy, a massive attempt to open up new farmlands to feed a hungry nation. A generation later, the wilderness has become a home. Mr. Soy is one of the pioneers.
I'm a Korean, but many people came with me. Russians, Poles, Germans, Kazakhs. We came to make this steppe our own.
Ты, Таня, нашла Кравченко?
Нет, я пока не нашла, дома никто не отвечает.
Вот и обязательно его найди, его предупреди.
Mr. Soy's story is typical of the people who settled here, built communities and raised families.
My family is a regular family. We have 11 grandchildren, and I'm sure there'll be some more. We keep the camels to make shubat, fermented camel's milk. It's a very valuable product for curing people, and we use it in our clinic.
In a land of great horsemen, it should not have surprised the TBS crews to find that on their day off, they went to the horse races.
the crowd, you can see a mosaic of faces, the new citizens of Kazakhstan. Russians, Germans, Ukrainians, many races, but relatively few Kazakhs. Nowadays, the nearest most Central Asians get to a horse, maybe a day at the races. The stakes at the state-run track are only pennies, and the payoff is in much more. But the lines are long, even for the next race.
Лошади выходят на финишную прямую, заезд ведет третий номер дисциплина. Второй номер повозка стоит.
The camels are state-owned, but the cars are increasingly private. 1 in 7 Soviet families owns one. The Soviets have more money in their pockets than ever before, and a car gives them far greater independence. Up to a point, that is. Look familiar?
Tashkent is the largest city in Central Asia, but it shows more than mere megabillions in Soviet investment. It shows why the local populations are impressed with the Soviet system.
The metro is the most recent example of such investment. Special engineering skills were needed to build a system in this earthquake-prone zone. It reveals the level of technical skills evident now in Central Asia, which is also the home of the Baikonur Space Center. This station, called Cosmonauts, celebrates achievement in space, including the joint Apollo-Soyuz mission. It's taken only 2 generations for the people of Tashkent to travel from the third world to the space age.
Не пел я песни страстью опьянённый, не плакал горько, не пускался в пляс. Не пел он песни страстью опьянённый, не плакал горько, не пускался в пляс, а гордо шел, а гордо шел.
The program on Central Asia documents a people making incredible strides, and yet they strive to hang on to something of their heritage.
We have the general Soviet system in our Kazakh Republic, but our nationality not Russian. Our nationality is Kazakh.
Kazakhs have a great curiosity about the English-speaking world.
In our section, we learn all that you can about different countries that speak in English.
To know each other some more. Not only in the letters which we received and which we sent to each other, but know each other and to meet with us, with them, with American people, with American youth in their country, in our country, to exchange with delegations. And so to know more and more.
Every evening after classes at the Frunze Polytechnic in Kyrgyzia, the disco club goes into action on lemonade. All the trappings of the modern world have been brought into Central Asia by the Russians.
The timeless traditions of Central Asia are disappearing from the streets and mountains and prairies.
It's no longer the call of the muezzin that unites the faithful each night. It's the news from Moscow in Russian that's listened to around the hearths of Soviet Central Asia.
Добрый вечер. Здравствуйте, товарищи. Передаем ответ Михаила Сергеевича Горбачева на вопрос организаторов 6-й Софийской международной встречи писателей. Вопрос. Каким вы видите будущее планеты, человечества и цивилизации? Ответ. Вопрос, на который вы просили меня ответить, пожалуй, главный вопрос.
This seems like the story of a pretty model, a hard-working single parent in Tallinn, the fashion capital of the Soviet Union. But other ideas about the Baltic republics come through. Western ideas like style and incentive and quality.
The clothes Tina models are designer originals. Like in the West, very few can afford them. But they are copied and show up on the racks. So Baltic women are generally better dressed than most Soviets. Tina works here, at the studio of the fashion house. She's also been on assignment to Moscow and abroad. She makes a good living by Soviet standards. She lives with her father, her younger sister, and her little son, Stan Erik. Tina has never married.
There is no prejudice against single mothers in our country. There is no shame of women having a child. Women are encouraged to have children. Every month our society pays a little support for single mothers. Society helps them to grow up their children.
Throughout the series, Roy Schreider helps put across the essential reasons behind the stories that are included.
If Horace Greeley were alive today and living in the Soviet Union, he'd probably have this to say in the newspaper Pravda. If you're young, tough, and looking for adventure, go east, young man. Siberia needs you. It used to be a one-way ticket to exile. There's now a chance for young Soviets to do something for their country, make some extra money, maybe even start a whole new life.
The story of Siberia is a threefold one, of native people, of the families of exiles, and of the mineral wealth which may make the Soviet Union the richest nation on earth someday.
When the Russians first came to these lands more than 300 years ago, there were already people living here, Yakutis, a people closely related to the North American Eskimo. A Yakuti legend says, when God flew over the earth, sprinkling gold and diamonds and other precious metals, his hands got so cold that he dropped the whole bag here in Yakutia. It's a fact that Yakutia is the richest region of Siberia in mineral deposits, and the one that's being developed most rapidly. Gold, diamonds, tin, iron ore, and coal are just some of the treasures that lie thick in the ground beneath Yakutia's permafrost. All you have to do is get at them. More and more hands are turning up to help the state do just that.
Metal, let us турбокомпрессор подшипник.
А может вкладыш?
Нет.
А как турбокомпрессор? Он клинит сразу.
Нет, потому что много турбокомпрессор воздушный коллектор.
David Pierce, an Englishman, came to Siberia under contract to an American company that sold equipment to Siberians. His job was to troubleshoot problems and to keep the gear working.
The weather's not the problem. Basically, it's spare parts. We have spare parts from Japan, from England, from America. If I ordered today, it would be 1 year in coming here. That's the big guessing game is, what does that machine need in 1 year's time?
Pierce is not the only Westerner here concerned about the durability of the machinery. 36-year-old Rich Rosati from Minnesota spends 8 months a year in Siberia, trying to sell what Pierce has to service.
I've been coming in since 1982, and so far things have went fairly smooth. My Russian isn't that good, but I can get by. Mechanics aren't as qualified as we'd like, but they try hard. They're good to work with. They'll give you the shirt off their back. It's trying to be friendly. The first thing that comes up in conversations is, we want peace. So, heck, everybody does.
Do you think they mean it?
The people, yeah. I think they do. People are people.
Wherever you are in Siberia, chances are you're very remote, if not completely on your own. Life here is simple, but not easy. Rewarding if you know what you're doing. There's a way of life here born of necessity. It's called adapting. Siberians, since the first pioneers, have had to learn this to stay alive in a difficult but beautiful land. At the heart of Siberia is Lake Baikal, the world's deepest and oldest freshwater lake. And it's something more to every Siberian. In the winter, the tiny village of Bolshoye Kati on the banks of Lake Baikal is accessible only by way of the frozen lake. Nikolai Vestchev was born and raised on the banks of Lake Baikal, as was his father, and his father's father.
We spent a couple of days in town, back west. There were cars, lots of people bumping into you, and no cows. I couldn't get back here fast enough.
People here care. They're sympathetic, that's the difference. They're intimate, welcoming, simple folk. They're not like that back west, not simple.
I've crossed Baikal by boat, on foot, and on horseback. I love the lake. I guess I know it now.
The story of the Caucasus is sunny and robust, where every valley speaks a different language and accommodation has been going on for thousands of years. These are colorful people with strong egos and an ethnic confidence which permits an outgoing warmth to strangers.
Nino Ramashvili has been the driving force behind the Georgian State Dance Company for more than 40 years.
Georgia provides more than its share of the great artists, writers, film directors, actors, and dancers. Its people put great value on creative inspiration.
Zadie, co na zadie, gocia, zadie.
greatest work was done by my late husband Iliko. We founded the group together more than 40 years ago. Iliko left this world happy, knowing that our son Tengiz will continue the tradition. And after Tengiz will come my little grandson, Iliko. And Georgian dance will survive whether we are dead or alive, as long as the nation lives.
Georgian dance is, above all, an attitude, and it's learned very young. For male dancers, Georgian dance is equal parts gymnastics, ballet, and self-torture. But any red-blooded Georgian boy would love to be accepted in this world-famous dance troupe. The main thing is to be dramatic.
Sometimes a program follows a character as he shows us what makes him most proud about his homeland, as did Gela Chakviani when he showed us his beloved city, Tbilisi.
People have always wanted to preserve the old section of the city, because again, it's a matter of identity. You know, you must see your roots, I believe, in order to feel that you belong to the city, because it stresses continuity.
A thriving Jewish community has lived in Tbilisi for centuries.
Oh yes, definitely, they worship. There are Russian churches, there are Georgian churches, there are Armenian church, you know, and there is a mosque.
Muslims, Jews, Christians, communists, they're all part of the texture of life in Tbilisi.
An understanding of the Soviet Union today is hardly possible without some knowledge of recent history. The life of Joseph Stalin looms over the land, larger than any of the czars of the past.
We can only guess what ambitions were born in this simple room in a remote village in the Caucasus. What plans were made by the simple shoemaker and his deeply religious wife. Their son, Joseph, would make something of himself. He would become a priest. Young Joseph, however, had other ambitions. As Joseph Stalin, man of steel, he rose to become one of the most powerful men in history. Heads of state came to him, including Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain, Harry Truman, President of the United States. A man from Georgia ruled the Soviet Union as a one-man show. Behind the jovial Uncle Joe public figure was Stalin, the ruthless tyrant. His methods of violence were perfected during the revolution. When Lenin died, Stalin seized power. Even his closest associates came to fear him, for his paranoia knew no bounds. When his old friend Sergei Ordzhonikidze fell from favor, Stalin made him an offer he couldn't refuse: the firing squad in disgrace, or suicide and a grand state funeral. In 1953, death also claimed Joseph Stalin. After 30 years of absolute rule, the man of steel was reduced to this: his death mask. Those eyes would no longer strike terror in the hearts of all who would disagree. Tonight, in Moscow's Architects Club, Yevgeny Yevtushenko will perform.
I always have butterfly in stomachs. I'll read some old poems, including Babi Yar, and some new poems. When I will say, read me, you laugh for fragments first time.
Yevtushenko's poetry has courted the wrath of the authorities for over 25 years. In Russia, a respected poet, and most good ones are respected, can be as popular with their audiences as a pop star and wield enormous amounts of influence. Influence that can move governments as well as people. It's expected Yevtushenko will not pull his punches tonight. In this poem, The Heirs of Stalin, written 25 years ago, Yevtushenko hisses a warning to his people of the cruelties of their past. The young honor guard who reverently watch over Lenin's tomb purged it of Joseph Stalin's body.
Медленно плыл, задевая краями штыки. Он тоже безмолвным был, тоже, но грозно безмолвным, угрюмо сжимая.
Be vigilant, Yevtushenko warns. Be vigilant, for the heirs of Stalin may still be around. The days of the dictator's purges must never return. It's just what a Russian audience wants to hear. An incisive commentary on the past with clear resonances for the future. May 9th, Victory Day in the Soviet Union, marks the end of World War II. Every year on this day, Georgy Shapovsky heads for Volgograd railway station to meet again the old comrades he fought alongside in the war. It's a tense and emotional moment. For each year, the band of survivors diminishes.
The TBS filmmakers found themselves being touched again and again by the depth of feeling about war. Those in their 50s and over almost all experienced unthinkable fear and hardship and pain because of war. Today, they say to our cameras, they must remember. They must see that it does not happen again. The communist founders of the nation had an idea that their people could be molded into a single form. They'd start with the children and raise a generation of super Soviets. Today, they know it won't work. People are different here as everywhere. And people have very different ideas about life. The Soviet system is learning that good ideas can't be suppressed. They won't die. They keep coming back again and again until they're accepted.
It's meant that the once banned works of Boris Pasternak, author of Dr. Zhivago, can now be officially read in his own language, in his own country, by his own people.
I think Pasternak was a part of immortal conscience. He was one of last moral controller of society. You know, when Pasternak died, I wrote one poem entitled A Fence. So you see fence which divides these pine trees. That's like way some people from our bureaucracy wanted to divide Pasternak's poetry from the rest of the people. But in the open air, both trees embrace each other with their branches. So Pasternak's poetry embraces now us, and we embrace him.
The recognition of Boris Pasternak's work is a direct response to the call for openness.
Его так просто взять голыми руками, скоро их повыловят всех до одного. Когда же их всех повыловят, наступит эпоха, которую не выдумать и не описать. С умным хлопотно, с дураком плохо, нужно что-то среднее, да где ж его взять?
The signs are that with the new spirit of openness, more and more Soviets are in tune with Bulat Akujava.
Умным очень хочется.
Ordinary individuals getting what they want out of life in their own way.
У природы на устах коварные пророчества, но, может быть, когда-нибудь к среднему придем. Старался писать о себе.
I've always tried to write about my own experiences, to express my moods and my attitude to life. Then I noticed that the same questions that concern me also worry other people. It's rewarding to know that.
Akujava's poetry and music have had a profound effect on Soviet society. He understands the need for basic humanity and individual freedoms in that society. His father was executed by a firing squad in the Stalin era. His mother spent 17 years in a Gulag concentration camp. The new policy of openness has a special importance for him.
Я отношусь к этому оптимистически. Я хочу верить, что
I want to believe that it's real, because it's needed very much in our society.
что это постепенно.
I think it will gradually happen.
Я только считаю,
But it's a very complex and difficult process. It still needs a lot of effort and struggle for it to come true.
борьбы, труда для того, чтобы это осуществилось.
Anyway, I'm totally for it. We've got to restore more openness and democracy in our country. A normal human society can't exist without it.
Институт гласности, институт демократии, без которых нормальное человеческое общество существовать не может.
This is what the Portrait of the Soviet Union series is all about. It is the 900-year history of good ideas that prevail over bad ideas. The evolution of a nation. The evolution of ideas.
Словно тополь стройна и покрыта платочком шелковый.